Broadcasting.
So the day's just kind of going about itself yesterday evening, and then the story, Jaylon Smith has been released by the Cowboys. And now, of course, it looks like he might land somewhere else. That's not a surprise. Craig's mentioned a couple of the reports about maybe Green Bay. That remains to be seen. John Machota joins us on Wednesdays to talk Cowboys from theathletic.com. John, him being released, if that was going to happen, I would have thought it would have been before the season. It was the timing about cohesiveness in the locker room. Was it because the youngins are doing better? I know that Micah Parsons is a star right now. What about the timing here?
Yeah, it certainly was surprising, and I agree with you. It would have made more sense before the season, but I think that maybe Jerry and some other members of the front office need a little proof from Dan Quinn in the defense that the young guys could step up and could take on bigger roles. And to be honest, they haven't really shown that in previous seasons on defense to get this much immediate impact, not only from first-year free agents that they've signed off the street, but also from their draft class. And so I think that helped push this thing along. And then obviously these last 2 weeks, you've had Keanu Neal out with being on the COVID-19 reserve list. And so they needed Jaylon Smith. Now with Keanu Neal coming back, I think that factored into it as well, that like if they were going to make this move, sooner rather than later, because of what the implications would have been if Jaylon Smith got hurt, it would have locked in his contract for next year. And I don't think there's any way he was going to be back after this season, unless there was an injury and it locked his contract in. Let's just be honest here. He's not good in coverage. He has a hard time getting off blocks. I mean, it was running out of places to even have him out on the field. And the other part of it is that, the way that they play defense here, it's like you only really have two linebackers on the field at a time, and they're playing more and more of these safeties. You've seen them playing more of J-Ron Curse and guys like that as these almost like this hybrid safety linebacker role. That's why Keanu Neal's been able to fit in, even though he had been a traditional safety. And so I think what they've seen from the defense, what they've seen from their younger players to be able to step up, there was a time here when it was like you would have thought, well, if you don't have Randy Gregory and Leighton and Jalen and DeMarcus, this defense is in trouble. Well, they haven't had DeMarcus Lawrence. They haven't really needed Jaylon Smith and that much from Leighton Vander Esch, and they've been having success. And so I think that kind of opened their eyes that, we can get by without him. Let's make this move now.
John, it would seemingly, I saw that you wrote in your column about it that, last year at the end of the year, they asked, would you be surprised if you're not back? And he said, watch the film. Then obviously the Cowboys have certainly watched a lot of film. Were you shocked that he's kind of shocked that this is how it went down?
No, just because, with Jaylon Smith, one of the reasons he was able to overcome that knee injury that he had at the end of his Notre Dame career is because that's the way he thinks. Like, he doesn't put limitations on himself. He thinks that, he thought when that happened that he would get back to being the player that he was before the injury, which the player before the injury, he is Micah Parsons. I mean, that's what he would have been. He would have been a top 10, top 5 pick. But that injury was one that it was going to make it hard for him to even play football again, let alone play it at the NFL level, let alone play it at the NFL level at a high level to make a Pro Bowl, which he had done. And so I think all of that is fuel to the fire in your belief that don't listen to anybody else. Who cares what anybody else is saying? If I make this play, I feel good about it, I'm going to celebrate. Who cares if it's after a 7-yard gain? I'm doing my own thing. I'm not listening to any outside noise. And when you do that, it also comes off as a lack of awareness. And when that happens in the situations, like I said, when, you're giving up 2 or 3 big plays and then you make like one solid play and you're celebrating, let's be honest, football fans aren't idiots. I mean, they're going to see that stuff and it's going to rub people the wrong way. And that's certainly what has been happening with Jaylon Smith over the last, more than the last year. And it was just it's fascinating to me because, covering this team when he was drafted in 2016 and then just seeing what he overcame to come back, and the way he played in 2018, you were like, this is like one of the best stories ever. I never would have thought it would have turned as negative as it had over the last year plus. And it certainly had turned negative. And to be honest with you, I'm fascinated to see what team he goes to and how he plays when he gets there. Because like I said, if you can't get off blocks in the run game and you can't defend running backs and tight ends in the passing game, I don't know where you fit on an NFL field at linebacker in today's NFL game.
John, what have you made of sort of the response from the team? I know Micah Parsons talked about, Jalen's meant something to him since he's arrived, and know Leighton Vander Esch had that quote you put up that he seemed very angry or upset by it all going down and kind of lashing out at the fans a little bit. Your thoughts on just the locker room's reaction to the Jaylon Smith news?
Yeah, I mean, these guys are all surprised. And not just on the defensive side, offensive players, Ezekiel Elliott and others that have been around Jaylon Smith for several years, they're all surprised. I'm sure when we talk to Dak tomorrow, he'll say the same thing. And just like we were talking about, I mean, the timing of it is the other thing that really, you're just like, everything's going pretty good. You just won 3 games in a row. We're 3-1. Like, all of a sudden, this move's going to happen. This seems like a strange time for this to happen. But I'll say this. I don't see there being some hangover or some issues come Sunday against the Giants because, let's be honest, like, whether you're a leader or how long you're on the team for, whatever. At the end of the day, it matters. Are you making plays on Sunday? And so they didn't lose Trayvon Diggs. They didn't just release Oso Digizua. They didn't just cut Micah Parsons. Those are the guys that are making the plays on Sunday. Jaylon Smith wasn't making these big game-changing plays to where all of a sudden you're just sitting there and you're just like, how are they going to win these games without Jaylon Smith? Nobody that watches the Cowboys is going to say that. And I find it hard to believe that players who study the tape even more than the media or fans are studying are going to sit there and go, oh, I don't know how we're going to beat the Giants without Jaylon. That was such a key piece of our defense. I just don't see that happening. I mean, yeah, players are going to be surprised that the move happened. And yes, it is a wake-up call that, to any young player that, hey, this is a business. Don't ever get too comfortable because everything can change in a second. Absolutely, there's that wake-up call. But in terms of the psyche of the team, the impact it can have on Sunday, I don't see it being that great.
John, does Jerry loves Jaylon Smith. I think a lot of people like the guy. There's no question because of the great story. And you're right, he played well, his second and third year. But what's the sign here? Because Jerry doesn't like to get rid of people like this. This is not a Jerry Jones type move. Is this a great sign within the Cowboys organization?
I think it's a little bit of a sign that it's kind of going back to what I said earlier, that they feel more confident now than they probably have in a long time. That, you know what? We don't have to have an established player at all these positions, particularly on defense. Obviously, they've spent the money on offense. There's key pieces all over littered on that offense, whether it's high draft picks or big dollar guys. But on defense, particularly what they've gotten out of guys like DeMonte Casey and Keanu O'Neal and Jaron Kearse, and then obviously Trayvon Diggs being the 51st pick. Micah Parsons, yeah, he was the 12th overall pick. He's playing like he could have been the 3rd overall pick. Osa Digizua playing like he could have been a first-round pick. They got him in the 3rd. They think very highly of Chauncey Golston and clearly what he showed this past week. Jerry Jones was thrilled with that. If basically what I'm saying is if they did not have these signs early in the year that and hey, this is kudos to Dan Quinn, that he showed that he can bring some of these young guys in, some of these first-year players, and they could have immediate success, I don't think this move happened. But because we've seen that, I think that helped make people like Jerry Jones comfortable with this move.
That's actually maybe one of the things that nobody realized about Dan Quinn and his stops in Seattle and Atlanta. That was his true gift, was getting the most out of guys who are not stars.
And what's interesting about that, too, is the fact that, like, everybody thought, myself included, that they were going to play a lot of this cover 3 because that's what they did in Seattle. And really, yeah, they did that in Seattle because it fit their personnel, to your point. But also, it was different times then. And how much he's adapted and changed. Like, every week we've seen different game plans. And so it's allowed players, like you mentioned, these players, like, it's not like Richard Sherman was a high draft pick. It wasn't like Cam Chancellor was a high draft pick. Yeah, of course you have your Bobby Wagners and your Earl Thomases, but they had tons of guys over there on that defensive side of the ball that were that high draft picks that played at a high level. So, yeah, absolutely. Hats off to Dan Quinn for that. And he certainly has brought it over to this Cowboys defense. Now, hey, there's still a defense that gives up a ton of yards. They're still giving up points. But they've shown you that they can get these young players to contribute right now, and it makes you think, well, the more that those guys play, the better they'll get. Plus, you have other players on the way, DeMarcus Lawrence, Neville Gallimore, that are injured right now, Calvin Joseph, that could make this group even better. And so while, a lot of people sit there on the outside and they're like, man, why didn't they make a move for Stephon Gilmore? Why didn't they make a move for Richard Sherman? I think that they genuinely like these young players that are on the roster, whether us and in the media or fans don't see it, they genuinely believe that.
John, also one of the things about releasing Jaylon Smith is for the first time in a long time, the Cowboys do have this culture of army ant, worker bees. Not everybody is a star. And Jaylon Smith was very focused on the Jaylon Smith brand. And I think they're at least trying to move away from that 53 individual brands thing that was in the locker room for a couple years.
They could be, but I'll say this: they'll put up with that brand if you're putting up on Sunday.
Yeah.
If Jalen's going out there and he's getting sacked and he's making big time stops, I mean, I tweeted last night, a few hours after the move happened, that I think Cowboys fans will most remember him for the play in Houston at the end of that second quarter where he stopped. The Texans decided to go for it on 4th and 1 there with about 10 seconds to go in the second quarter, and Deshaun Watson kept it. And I mean, Jaylon Smith ran almost the entire length of the field to knock him out of bounds for a 2-yard loss, and it was like, whoa, that looks a little bit like that guy that you saw at Notre Dame. Man, if that's what they got now, and then you pair him with Leighton Vander Esch, this could be wild. And when it's like that, you can be the wolf hunter. You can sell sunglasses and have clear eye view and be whatever you want to be. And Jerry will be the one, champion whatever you want to do. But when the play starts dropping off, then all of a sudden it becomes a decision of like, well, we might need to move on here.
Yeah, it's interesting that I love the youngins, man. That's what I call them, the young kids. They're playing, and Paul, I call them army ants. Mm-hmm. What did you call them? Worker bees.
Worker bees.
They're not high priced. They're not high picks. They're just playing football. I love it. I absolutely. Every team, the Patriots did it for years, right? They don't have. It's as if when Gilmore became available, what was the first thing? Oh, well, we got to get him.
Yeah.
No matter what, it's because it's a toy, and you don't need him. I'm not saying he's not better than what you have in Anthony Brown, but he's going to cost something. And it's not a fantasy football league team; it's a football team. So, anything else for John?
Yeah, John, how about the Giants coming up?
It was a game.
There is a game coming up this weekend. The Giants coming off their first win after that 0-3 start. Obviously, Dallas looks to be pretty well in control of the division, but to remain in control, you got to win these types of games. Heavy favorites, I would think, here, John, but what are your thoughts on New York?
So when Mike McCarthy was doing his post-game press conference on Sunday, I was checking scores, and I saw that the Giants ended up beating New Orleans overtime, and all I kept thinking about was how Mike probably loved that. Because if they're the 0-4 Giants coming in this game, it's very easy for your team to overlook them. But for them to come back and play the way they did and to win in overtime in New Orleans like that, that's exactly what Mike McCarthy wants, so he can show the team, hey, this is the team that you're going to be facing on Sunday. It's not that team that went 0-3. Saquon Barkley's making plays. They're finding John Ross. Like, Daniel Jones is playing pretty solid. Like, it's the exact type of tape you want to throw out there to get your guys motivated. Because if the Cowboys are motivated, I don't see how they don't win this by double digits. Like, they're clearly better than the Giants, especially playing at home. But there were some things that the Giants did in that game that made you think, hey, maybe this offense is kind of getting it together. Mm-hmm. Maybe this isn't going to be kind of a walk in the park. And the other thing that's interesting about the Giants is that for all the talk that we have down here about Trayvon Diggs being the 51st overall pick, don't sleep on the 50th overall pick in this past draft, Azeez Ojulari from Georgia, who's their top pass rusher. I thought it was crazy that he fell all the way to 50 in this draft. He's their leading pass rusher. He has 3 sacks this year. He's certainly a guy to keep an eye on. But one last thing I was going to tell you guys, because you had the different names. Rod Marinelli liked to call his guys the Mighty Orphans. So there's another one.
There you go.
Yeah,
Orphans. Which is a great movie. Yeah. No question about it. And guys would play hard for him, no question. Thanks a lot, John. Appreciate your time.
No problem, guys. Anytime.
John Machota, theathletic.com, with us on Wednesdays in the 5 o'clock hour. Been back and forth between 5 and 5:30 based on also what he's doing covering the Cowboys in Frisco and elsewhere as well. Hey, I saw this note, and I know we have the top 5